We are in the midst of a biological, spiritual, and psychological war. And while I understand that most people want to continue with the normalcy of day to day life, and I don't want to be the kind of person that brings you this kind of material. However, I'm a realist and I consider myself a realist. I do not consider myself to be an optimist, and I do not consider myself to be a pessimist. I am a detached person, however, I do care about the future of humanity. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the state of our society, not just like in the in America, because I have viewers that are from all over the world. We're going to talk about almost everywhere that's going on. We live in a world where people are openly betraying their own kind, their own species. This is the satanic attack that is on us because we are made in the image of God and Satan doesn't like that. This is not a religious channel either. However, we're going to be biblical here, and anyone that is godly in the sense of the quality and not necessarily the religiousness is going to understand exactly what I'm saying and is going to understand exactly where I'm coming from. We live in a society designed to kill itself. Housing is more expensive than ever. In fact, before we watch this video here, I want to show you guys this. As of 2022, the average monthly mortgage payment was $2,317. Now, the average income is generally between, in the U.S. that is, between 35 to 50,000 for males and 25 to 40,000 for females. That is the average income. Okay? This means that in order to pay your monthly mortgage payment, which is $2,317, according to the National Association of Realtors, that means that almost all, 66% plus of your income is going to be going toward your monthly mortgage payment. That is simply not acceptable. It's not going to be optimal. It's not going to be, how do I say this? It's not going to be formidable, and it's not going to be sustainable. Now let's take a look at this lady from Ireland, which this was 5 months ago, that talked about restricting freedom for the common good.
Because when you think about it, all law, all legislation is about the restriction of freedom.
Okay, that's immediately where she's wrong. That's not what it is at all. Now, there's a book called The Morality of Law, and I read this in the philosophy of law in a class in in college. And the philosophy of law talks about the morals of law and exactly what the law is designed to do. What she just described, this Pauline O'Reilly, the senator from the Green Party in Ireland. I don't know if she's still in office. I don't know too much about the Irish government system as far as the people in it. Like, I don't know too much about it. However, I don't think what she just said is correct. The law is not to prohibit or restrict freedom. Because she says when you think about it, right? Let's go back just a minute. She says when you think about it, law is about restricting freedom.
Because when you think about it, all law, all legislation is about the restriction of freedom.
See, that's not correct in the sense of morality. Because true freedom is in discipline, right? True freedom is in having boundaries. That's what law is supposed to be. Law is supposed to be about having boundaries in the society that create interior wealth emotionally, physically, and spiritually. That's the way it's supposed to be, as far as I can tell. But obviously, this approach is going to be not a prosperity based approach. This is about control.
That's exactly what we're doing here, is we are restricting freedom, but we're doing it for the common good.
Right from the horse's mouth.
You will see throughout our Constitution, yes, you have rights, but they are restricted for the common good. Everything needs to be balanced. And if your views on other people's identities...
Everything needs to be balanced. I mean, reality itself is already perfectly balanced. And I don't really believe in balance anymore. Like, of course, like, I'm going to get a little bit philosophical here, but of course, balance in the sense of understanding that our species cannot function unless there are certain protocols of how to behave properly. I understand that kind of balance. But what she's talking about is not that kind of balance. It's talking about, like, because we're supposed to have empathy toward each other, right? We're supposed to have a sense of togetherness. That's what empowers people to prosper in the first place. But what she's talking about is restricting your ability to even think to some degree. That's what, in Orwellian terms, what was it, new think? Was what they called it, new think, and old think?
go to make their lives unsafe, insecure, and cause them such deep discomfort that they cannot live in peace, then I believe that it is our job as legislators to restrict those freedoms for the common good. Because
yeah, whoever voted her in is a communist.
You cannot do and say whatever you like in our society, a society governed by laws. That's the very fundamental of a legislation system. That should be the very fundamentals of any legislator who sits in this chamber, that they understand that what we do is restrict freedoms.
Who? Oh my gosh. It's just like, is this for real? Like, is this real? I saw this on my Twitter feed of someone posting this, and I don't have Twitter personally. Like, I have it for my business, and I just happened to see this, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, there's no way. So I looked it up, and sure enough, this is it. So you're hearing it right from the horse's mouth, ladies and gentlemen. The government is designed to restrict your freedom, and that's our job. So basically, tyrannize the people with their own money and tyrannize the people with their own authority? Question mark. Like, that's what it sounds like to me. Now, meanwhile, in China, there's a mysterious pneumonia coming about, and this is from I don't actually know how to pronounce this, but aljazeera.com, and this was written just a few days ago, that China is experiencing the first winter without strict COVID-19 restrictions since the outbreak of the pandemic 3 years ago, and there's a new wave of respiratory illness seeping into the country. So basically, it goes on to say that there's a new mysterious pneumonia specifically targeting kids. Now, how strange is that? Like, I'm not making any claims here. I'm not saying anything specifically, but how weird is that, people? Like, you guys got to understand, we are the only ones that are aware of this kind of stuff going on. We're the only kind of people that are actually interested in the actual happenings of the world. We are actually interested in the wheels that go and turn in our society. These people around us, the Walking Dead, they don't understand the mission, okay? They don't understand the mission. They don't understand what we're actually here to accomplish. They don't understand that what we're here to accomplish is to free ourselves from our own insecurities. As this lady says, we got to make sure everybody's safe and not insecure. Look, if you're insecure physically, as far as your financial situation or whatever, like, what's really cool, at least in America, is that if you really want to, you can change it. It takes a lot of work, but you can change it. And I haven't lived anywhere other than America, so I don't really know the depths of all of these things regarding like the insecurities that she's talking about. Like, I don't actually know what she means. Like, let's go back.
Like in our society, a society governed by laws, that's the very fundamental of a legislation system. That should be the very fundamentals of any legislator who sits in this chamber, that they understand that. It is our job, as such deep discomfort that they unsafe, insecure, and cause them such deep discomfort that they cannot live in peace.
Yeah, okay. Like, here's the thing. I understand, like, her words. This is what I hate about politicians. They use the truth to tell lies, right? They're so subtle about it. And so many narcissists do this. And I got that quote from Game of Thrones where Cersei, who rises to power, uses the truth to tell lies. That's like the epitome of the dark side of the anima. And the anima, if nobody understands what I'm saying when I say this, it's a Jungian psychological concept in which it is basically the eternal image of the feminine inside the male psyche. It is the totality of feminine experiences inside the male psyche. And it's manifesting itself not only inside the male psyche, but he also projects it outward. But here we actually see like the dark side of the mother. Like, this is the devouring mother archetype right here. She's so worried about her like, because she's basically, what it sounds like is she's seeing her people that she's supposed to be governing as children that are unsafe, that are uncomfortable, and that can't get peace otherwise. Look, I swear, if the second round of lockdowns happens again, whether this year or next year or wherever, and we have to wear those stupid masks again and all this stuff, look, it's not going to be a pretty thing to go through. And we have to prepare ourselves as godly people and be aware of what's going on in the world right now and how things are going about. Our failure to realize that the civilization that we live in, the people in our leadership roles do not want to see us prosper. The people that are supposed to be leading us to prosperity only want two classes. And this is a fundamental communist idea. You have the people that are in power and the people that are not. And here's the thing, because I did see Napoleon, the new movie that came out this last weekend. What was so interesting about Napoleon was that he did not want power and influence for the sake of power and influence. He wanted it to create like an artistic version. Like he did it for his image of what he saw France to be and what he wanted it to be. He did not do it for the sake of power. Unlike and even Stalin, like Stalin, people that may not be aware of Stalin, Stalin in the Russian regime in the early 1900s, mid 1900s, he didn't rise to power into the Russian regime and the USSR just because he wanted the power. He was kind of handpicked by Vladimir Lenin, who was the head of the Bolshevik party until they had that coup in 1917, until they got power, all of it. And they were able in 1918 to start setting more of a communist fundamental viewpoint. And they actually changed their names from Bolshevik to communist then. And then in 1924, Vladimir Lenin died, who is still like, let me see if I can actually pull it up while I'm talking here. Vladimir Lenin, current. Like he was the face of the USSR. Yeah, he was embalmed here. I'll show the pictures here. So he was embalmed, and this is still like his body's preserved. It's kind of creepy, but this guy was, what was so interesting about Vladimir Lenin and his rise to power was that he seemed very common. He was a very common guy. And yet he had strategically the mind of a highly sophisticated, organized chaos kind of guy. You can't really deny the brilliance of these dark figures like Hitler or like Stalin, or even like the greatest, like most, I would say, controversial, which would be Genghis Khan, who killed nearly like 10% of the world population at one point in time and literally lowered the carbon footprint, right? So all of these kinds of people, all of these kinds of things start out and seem to be like they're one of us, quote unquote. They're one of the people, a man of the people, a woman of the people, whatever you want to call it. And they might seem that way for a long time until they get into power. And here's the thing. I'm not going to lie to you guys and say that I'm not interested in power. I'm not going to be interested in influence. I'm not going to say that to you because that's not the truth. I'm highly interested in power and I'm highly interested in influence, but more so I'm interested in influence. And the reason I'm interested in influence is because if I can influence people to wake up to their true nature, which is peace and joy, then we won't have to restrict the freedoms of everybody. We can live in a moral society in which people recognize one another as brother or sister. But unfortunately, without awakened individuals, without these awakened people, I genuinely believe that our society will not function. And that is why we have to create the reality that we want to mold as God's people, as chosen ones. Don't allow these people to restrict your freedom. Don't allow anybody to restrict your freedom. However, you can say, like, and this is what I've done with women, right? Like, in relationships, and it can be the same kind of thing. Like if you're like on a sports team or something. It's like, look, you can do X. Like let's say you're trying out for the basketball team or whatever, and you're eating a lot of junk food or whatever, and you're not able to make the time of running a mile or whatever in the time that you need to because you are eating too much food or you are consuming too much and you're starting to get a little, like you're starting to gain weight. Well, the coach might say, like, look, you can eat whatever, you can do whatever you want. Like, you're a grown adult, but you can't be on the team and you're not going to be able to keep up with everybody else if you don't meet these qualifications. Therefore, if you do this, we will not tolerate that kind of behavior on this team. That's the kind of thing that you want to think about. And with women, something that I've put as a boundary in my relationships are, you know, I'm not compatible with women that are want to do flings with me. So I've told women in the past that, you know, you can do what you want. She can do what she'd like. But with me, no fling of any kind will be tolerated. And so these kinds of restrictions are not really restrictions. They're boundaries. So when she says that we're restricting freedom for the common good, that's the wrong kind of wording. Maybe look, I don't think she means that, this lady that we were watching the video on before. But all in all, it's about being able to say no. And there's no kind of, like, I don't really believe that people, how do I say this? I think if people were able to start acting as if life was good, things would actually get a lot better. But there's so much fear, there's so much fear mongering, there's so much depression and anxiety being advocated and even encouraged to some degree, because you're going to get certain perks or whatever if you have certain kind of mental illnesses or whatever. And it's just like, what kind of life are you really trying to live there, buddy? What kind of life are you really trying to create? I am genuinely the most happy person that I know. But like, so many people think that my passion for these kinds of topics or anything like that makes me an angry person, or like I'm aggressive. It's like, well, I'm not aggressive, but I am direct. And I can be aggressive if I really want to, 100%. It's because people need to know about these kinds of things. People need to see it. So anyway, with all that being said, I hope this message was useful and insightful to some degree, and I hope you gained some kind of edification. If you made it this far in the video, and if you want to consider participating in the intimacy support group coming up on December 10th, feel free to sign up in the description box below under the URL Regal Change Academy. Peace be with you. Till next time.